I love your show. Did you know that me and your husband have been sleeping together?
Hello and welcome back to another episode of All Things Girl World. In today's video, we're discussing Season 1, Episode 1 of Being Mary Jane, and I'm sharing my thoughts and opinions on some of the moments that immediately stood out to me in the pilot episode. From Mary Jane's complicated relationship with Andre, including the moment she approaches his wife about their affair, to the dynamic she has with her family, and even the pressures that come with her career, this first episode already gives us a lot to unpack. Being Mary Jane is a drama series created by Mara Brock Akil that premiered on BET in 2013 and went on for a total of 5 seasons before its final season aired in 2019. The show stars Gabrielle Union as Mary Jane Paul, a highly successful television news anchor. Now, this is actually my first time watching the show, and I'm currently still in Season 1. But knowing that the series was created by Mara Brock Akil, it didn't take long for me to start noticing some parallels between Mary Jane Paul and Joan Clayton, even though Being Mary Jane isn't a sitcom. Mara does a really great job telling the story of the sophisticated Black woman who appears to have it all on the surface. We're talking about women with successful careers, financial stability, beauty, style, and respect in their professional fields. But at the same time, they still long for love and a family, all while carrying the emotional, mental, and often financial weight of the people around them. And that dynamic becomes pretty clear even in the very first episode. The first episode opens with Mary Jane spending a quiet evening at home baking when she suddenly hears the doorbell ring. It's Andre, played by Omari Hardwick. This is obviously someone that MJ has had a relationship with, and he shows up drunk at her door pleading with her to let him in. My assumption is that he must have been in the doghouse with her because she hadn't heard from him in a while, and we later find out there was actually a pretty major reason for that. After she lets him in, the two end up sleeping together, and he spends the night at her house. The next morning, he even tells her he loves her. Of course, that makes her feel good because MJ is a woman who wants love, and she's been spending a lot of time with Andre. So in her mind, this probably feels like things are finally going in the direction she'd want them to go. She even says something to the effect of, "God give me a sign if he's the one." However, unbeknownst to her and to me, Andre is actually married. MJ does the right thing when she finds out and immediately kicks him out. Of course, she's hurt, but in my opinion, she does allow that hurt to cloud her judgment a few times throughout the episodes I've seen so far. For example, MJ was out one day and happens to spot Andre's wife Avery headed into a nearby store. Now, she already knows what Avery looks like because after finding out he was married, MJ had gone to her friend's store one night to do some late night shopping. Andre was about to walk into the store with Avery, but when he saw MJ, he immediately left, clearly trying to avoid her and protect his secret. So when MJ later sees Andre's wife again, she decides to use that moment as an opportunity to come clean about the affair. Now, I kind of understand what MJ thought she was doing here. She didn't know Andre was married when she got involved with him, so in her mind, she's given this woman information that most women would probably want to know. I know some people would rather not know, but generally speaking, most women would want the truth. But I do have a question for y'all. So after hearing Andre's wife tell MJ how much of a fan she is of her show and just giving her all of this praise, in that moment, would you have still told her? Or would you have been like, I can't do this right now? Because it did feel a little strange to me that MJ still decided to drop the bombshell right after this woman finished telling her how much she enjoys her and how much her show gets her through the day. I don't know, I guess I just felt bad for Andre's wife in that moment. Now, I will say I was not expecting her response. Her reaction was almost like, why did you have to ruin this for me? She basically made it clear that she's madly in love with her husband, as she should be, and believes they're in marital bliss. And here you come walking up to her while she's shopping to tell her you've been sleeping with him. And when Avery looks at MJ and basically asks, what do you want me to do with this information? I was kind of like, okay, that's different. She made it very clear that she wasn't leaving him, and she essentially tells MJ to get out of her face, which is a pretty understandable reaction for a woman who just found out her husband was cheating on her from the very woman she had just finished praising. So overall, the Andre situation in this first episode already tells us a lot about where MJ is emotionally, and it also feels like it's setting the tone for the kind of emotional roller coaster she might go through while trying to find the one, especially since it's clear that she really does want love and a family. And just based on the few episodes I've watched so far, this situation between Mary Jane and Andre doesn't just end here. There's definitely more to unpack as their story continues to play out. After everything that happens with Andre, the episode also brings back someone from MJ's past, her ex, David. We learned that David had been trying to reach out to MJ for a while, calling her and even messaging her on social media after it seems like the two of them had some kind of falling out. And interestingly enough, after everything MJ just went through with Andre, she suddenly seems a lot more open to reconnecting with David. She even agrees to meet him for a late night date. Now, when she's ready to go meet him, you can tell she's in a really vulnerable space emotionally. She's looking through their old pictures, going down memory lane, and thinking about what their relationship used to be. But when she finally gets to the place where they're supposed to meet, she just sits in the car and ends up having a change of heart. It seems like she realizes she doesn't want their reunion to just be about the two of them hooking up. She wants it to actually mean something. Ironically though, the very next night, David shows up at her house with chips and salsa, and the two of them end up sleeping together anyways. And then MJ does something that actually irritated me. She secretly freezes David's semen in her freezer without his knowledge or consent. Now, I understand that MJ really wants to be a mother, but I'm not gonna lie, that felt like a very concerning and desperate move. Because wanting a child is one thing, but that situation crossed into territory that felt a little extreme. Well, a lot. Situations like this start to reveal a lot about MJ as a person, because when you take a step back and look at her life overall, MJ is clearly a very successful woman. She's a respected television news anchor, she's established in her career, and she's built a life for herself that, from the outside looking in, a lot of people would probably admire. She's accomplished, financially stable, beautiful, stylish, all of those things. But what stood out to me in this first episode is that MJ seems to be a lot more successful in her professional life than she is when it comes to maintaining healthy relationships with the people around her. And to be fair to her, some of that isn't even her fault. From what we see in this episode, MJ is someone who is constantly showing up for the people in her life. She's supportive, she's generous, and she's someone who cares deeply about the people around her. But at the same time, it doesn't always feel like that same level of care and support is being poured back into her. And that made me feel really bad for her. Because this is something I think a lot of women can relate to, especially women who are used to being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who's always helping everybody else get through whatever they're dealing with. Sometimes you can be the person who's taking care of everyone else around you, but when it comes to your own emotional needs, there isn't always someone there doing the same for you. And that's something that really stood out to me about MJ in the first episode. I will, however, say I'm glad that she had her friend Mark to lean on and vent to. And speaking of the people around MJ, we also have to talk about her family because the dynamic there is a bit of a mess. From what we see in this first episode, MJ seems to be in a situation where her family relies heavily on her money and resources to get by, but at the same time, they don't really want her advice on anything beyond that. Now, I do understand that MJ's mother is sick, so of course that adds another layer to the family dynamic and probably plays a role in why MJ can't just walk away from everything altogether, especially since all of them are living in her mother's house. And when I say all of them, I'm talking two brothers, a brother's girlfriend, her niece, and multiple kids. One thing that was immediately noticeable to me in the first episode is that MJ's mother calls her a lot. She wants to tell MJ everything that's been going on in the house, all the problems, the drama, everything. And you can see MJ trying to hold it together while she's on the phone with her, but I could already tell that wasn't going to last long because her family was starting to drive me crazy, and I was only into the first few episodes. The person who stood out the most to me was MJ's brother Patrick, along with his daughter Niecy. Patrick came across as very entitled, and it also seems like he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder when it came to his sister. But at the same time, he doesn't mind asking her for money. And this is where that dynamic I mentioned earlier really starts to show up in MJ's family. They seem to welcome MJ's wallet and her resources, but they're not nearly as open to the advice or lectures that might come along with it. For an example, her niece, who is very pregnant, asks MJ if she can use her house to host the baby shower. She also wants MJ to make the cake for it. But when MJ tries to give her some real advice about setting goals and thinking about where she wants to go in life, especially since she's about to be a young and potentially single mother, that advice doesn't really seem welcome. Now, to MJ's credit, she still shows up for her niece anyway. She ends up coming through for her and even buys her a really nice stroller. Which brings me to the situation with MJ's brother Patrick asking her for $500. It looked like he was trying to get the money to buy the stroller for his soon-to-be grandchild. But if that's the case, why not just say that from the beginning? Instead, you show up at your sister's job asking her for $500 with no real explanation after she already told you no the first time. And then when you say you don't need it anymore, you've got an attitude about it. Because let's be real, with everything else Patrick seemed to have going on, him asking for $500 with no context, I probably would have told him no too. This is yet another dynamic that I think a lot of women can recognize. Sometimes you end up being the caregiver, the problem solver, the therapist, and everything else for your family, even when you're not the only sibling around. But somehow you're the one everyone leans on because you're seen as the most responsible one or the most successful one. Professionally, MJ is the definition of a high achiever. She's sharp, articulate, and she commands the screen with confidence and authority, and she takes her show Talk Back with Mary Jane Paul very seriously. To her, it's more than just a job. It's a platform that she wants to actually use for meaningful conversations. But even though MJ is successful in her career, her professional life comes with its own set of challenges. Inside the newsroom, we see her run into resistance when she tries to pursue stories that reflect the things that she actually cares about. One example of this is when she pushes to cover a major magazine story that describes Black women's appearance as ugly. To MJ, this is something that's culturally harmful and worth talking about. She sees it as an important conversation. But the network basically shuts the idea down, saying that the story is old or that it would be better suited for a blog. But moments like that really show how MJ's editorial judgment is often overridden by executives who seem more focused on optics, trends, and what feels comfortable rather than what might actually be important conversations to have. And that same kind of tension shows up again in the stories she covers about women stealing sperm. Now, professionally, MJ approaches that topic with a lot of curiosity and complexity. She even interviews a woman who openly talks about taking a man's semen after a breakup as a way of reclaiming power and time. But what's interesting is that conversation doesn't just stay in the newsroom, it actually follows MJ home. Because after hearing that woman talk about that, that's what gives MJ the idea to take or steal David's semen and freeze it. Even within the first few episodes, starting with episode 1, you can already see that while MJ's career has afforded her a very successful life, it's definitely not without its stresses and challenges. It almost feels like she's expected to be brilliant but not disruptive, insightful but not too confrontational. Her ideas are welcomed, but only when they stay within certain boundaries. That ongoing struggle to fully own her voice in a system that benefits from her talent but still tries to control how far she can push things seems to be a big part of MJ's professional journey. You can already see her fighting to have a say in what stories matter and also dealing with the reality that sometimes the stories she believes in the most are the ones that don't get told. So when you take a step back and look at everything that happens in this very first episode, we're really being introduced to the world of Mary Jane Paul, a woman who, on paper, seems to have it all. She's successful, respected in her career, financially stable, and confident on camera. But once you start looking at the different areas of her life, her relationships, her family dynamics, and even the pressure she faces at work, you quickly realize that being the person who has to stand on the front line of everything can come with a lot of weight. MJ is the one holding things together in so many spaces. She's the voice on television, the reliable one in her family, and the woman still trying to figure out love and what she really wants her life to look like. And if this first episode is any indication, it feels like we're about to watch her navigate the very real tension between success, expectations, and the desire to build a life that actually fulfills her. But I want to hear from you all. After watching this first episode, what were your thoughts on Mary Jane? Did you feel for her, or were there moments where you thought she made some things harder on herself, like approaching Andre's wife about her affair with him? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for your support as always, and I will talk to you all in the next video.